Welcome to the next installment of the Train Vehicle. Today I'll talk about funicular railways, and more specifically I'll talk about funiculars in Switzerland, Germany and New Zealand.
So what are funiculars? Funiculars are cable railways on an incline. Two carriages are connected by cable, which is wound around a pulley system at the top of the line. As one carriage descends, the other carriage ascends. Normally the wheel at the top around which the rope is wound is powered and brakes as well as moves the cable. As the two carriages are counterbalanced, the additional power required to move the car up the incline is normally only related to the weight of the passengers or cargo or any friction. As the carriages come to the middle of the funicular, they pass each other, normally always remaining on the same side of the funicular. Today, most funiculars use the same tracks for most of the length, except for the passing loop in the middle. But there are also some funiculars that have only one common rail for most of the track, and others which run on two sets of tracks side by side. The oldest tourist funicular in Switzerland is the Giessbach-Bahn. It was opened in 1879 and was the first funicular in the world to use the system with a single track and a passing loop then in the middle. It connects the ship landing bridge on Lake Brienz with a hotel beside the Giessbach waterfall. This is a wild and romantic area. Originally it was operated by the weight of water and the brake system, so the tank of the top carriage was filled with water and in this way was heavier than the carriage being pulled up the incline. And so at the bottom of the incline the tank was drained. By now it's an electric system. Recently the carriages have been returned to their original green livery. In this way they don't stand out that much but fit into the landscape. For many years the carriages were in a red livery, which had become the standard for Swiss mountain railways. Another funicular connecting a ship landing bridge to an area above the lake is the Treib-Seelisberg railway in central Switzerland. It sits above Lake Lucerne. This connects the village of Treib with its famous fisher's house to the village of Seelisberg with its pilgrimage chapel and huge hotel complex. The funicular was opened in 1916 and the new carriages came in 1965. This funicular still requires attendance on its somewhat curvy track. Well, let's get back to the canton of Bern. Funiculars also go up to mountain peaks. One example is the funicular up the Niesen. This is a peak with an elevation of 2,362 meters above sea level. The funicular starts in Mühlenen at nearly 700 meters above sea level. It is divided into two sections, effectively two funiculars, one after the other. Passengers need to change from the lower section to the upper section midway. In total contrast to that is the Marzili Bahn in Bern, which connects the suburb Marzili with the central city of Bern, specifically the area near the Parliament. This is just over 100 meters long, and top and bottom stations have a height difference of just over 30 meters. In effect, it functions as a glorified lift. It's, however, well used. It was opened in 1885, renewed in 1914, and the present carriages went in service in 1974. A somewhat longer funicular in Bern is the Gurtenbahn, which connects the city with its Hausburg. Well, in German-speaking countries, it's common for cities to have a peak, a Hausburg, where people go for a walk to clear their heads and to talk. For Bern, that is the Gurten. Funicular has connected this mountain with a Warbon train station since 1899. It was renewed and received new carriages in 1999. Similar panorama carriages are also common on other funiculars in Switzerland. Examples are the Harderbahn that connects Interlaken with its Hausburg Harder. That was opened in 1908, and the new panorama carriages went into service in 2008. The funicular from the ship landing bridge Beatenbucht on Lake Thun to Beatenberg was opened in 1889. It is 1.7 kilometers long and has an altitude difference of 553 meters. It got the new panorama carriages in 2005. In this way, the village of Beatenberg is connected to the ships on Lake Thun and the buses running along the right shore of the lake. From the top station, there's a connection to the gondola up to the Niederhorn mountain. I briefly want to mention two more funiculars in Switzerland that we've been on. One is the Lugano Citta, which connects Lugano railway station with the old city at the shore of the lake. This is only about 200 meters long and covers an altitude difference of just over 50 meters. It was opened in 1886 and modernized over the years. The last modernization was from 2014 to 2016, and then it got the new, very modern-looking carriages. The last one I want to look at is a very traditional Swiss funicular in the French-speaking part, the Chemin de Fer Funiculaire Terittet Glion. This is an early one opened in 1883. It initially had two parallel tracks until 1975, when the funicular was modernized. At the same time, it got new carriages and was changed from water balanced operation to electrical operation. Near the lower station in Terittet is one of the Anglican churches in Switzerland, which was built for English holiday guests in the 19th century. Well, here it's seen with one of the modern trolley buses operating there. That's also quite close to the railway station. With that, it's time to go to Germany. I'll just mention one funicular there, one which is not your ordinary funicular at all. It is the Oberweißbacher Bergbahn in the Thuringian forest. This is a broad gauge funicular with a gauge of 1.8 meters, which was opened in 1922. It is 1.3 kilometers long and bridges an altitude difference of 320 meters. What's exceptional is that it was used for both passengers and freight. One carriage is a standard passenger carriage. The other one is a freight platform on which standard gauge freight wagons could be moved up and down the incline. At the lower end, there was also a turntable that allowed wagons to be moved onto the platform. Well, nowadays, no freight is carried on this funicular anymore. A passenger carriage is placed on the platform so that there is more passenger capacity. And in summer, it's actually an open carriage that is normally used. Now it's time to head to the other side of the world, to New Zealand. The most famous funicular in New Zealand is the Wellington Cable Car. It's actually not a real cable car, but rather a funicular. Cable cars have continually running cables to which the individual cars are attached and detached with a grip. The Wellington Cable Car was opened in 1902 and was a curious mixture between a cable car and a funicular. There was a cable onto which the descending cable car would grip. It wasn't continually moving though. At the same time, the descending cable car was connected through another cable via the top station with the other cable car. And so the ascending cable car would be hauled up the incline by the descending cable car. So that part was operated like a funicular. Nevertheless, the movement of the descending cable car was operated like a cable car. So it's a strange hybrid system. From 1978 to 1979, the Wellington Cable Car was rebuilt as a funicular with Swiss technology. The two carriages were built by Haberger of Thun. The line now has a 1 meter gauge, is 609 meters long, and has an altitude difference of about 120 meters. It has got 3 intermediate stations. The Wellington Cable Car is one of Wellington's major tourist attractions and connects the city centre with the botanical gardens and the suburb of Kelburn. It just goes to show that public transport is often a form of transport that does fascinate people. There's one other funicular in New Zealand, the Tyndall Tramway, which provides access to the Broken River ski field in Canterbury. This goes from the car park in the bush steeply up the slopes to the bush line, where the ski field accommodation lodges are. From there it's still a bit of a walk to the ski field proper. The funicular provides very good access to the upper reaches of the Craigieburn Range. Unlike some of the other ski fields in New Zealand, it doesn't require driving up quite so steep and winding an access road. That also means that often snow chains are not required to access the ski field, though carrying chains is still recommended, just in case. The Tyndall Tramway is 320 meters long and has an altitude difference of about 200 meters. It was built in 1985 to carry gear and freight up the slopes. In 2009 it was certified for carrying passengers, but then was not able to get new certification in 2018, so that it was closed until 2023. Now it's open again. The two carriages share a common central rail but have separate outer rails. At the passing loop in the middle, the central rail divides so that the two carriages can go past each other. The ride is actually quite fast initially, then slows down in the central section so that the two cars can pass, and then it speeds up again after that. The Tyndall tramway is operated by the passengers who have to push buttons and have to go through a clear sequence so that it can actually start off. Funiculars operate in quite varied environments and for varied purposes. From inner city connections to scaling mountains and providing access to ski fields. They are useful in many situations. But most of all, funiculars remind me of mountain landscapes, of the grandeur in which they are thin traces of human activity rather than part of the land-gobbling economy. I am always fascinated by mountains. Terry Tempest Williams said, "When we encounter mountains in wild places, we experience the peak of our own humility. Whether we are standing at the summit or paying respects from below, we are flushed with awe. Perhaps this is the beginning of religion." When we experience mountains, some of us may reduce them to seeing the product of geological processes. But really, that's quite inadequate and not the response that we have. For mountains evoke something that transcends our mundane experience. When we experience the beauty of the mountains, they lift our spirits. It is as if a door had momentarily opened and we had glimpsed something marvelous, and then the door is closed again. It is as if we had glimpsed eternity, something beyond the present. And so the mountain world, in a certain way, reflects something of God. For example, when Mark Twain visited Switzerland, he reflected the feeling when he found himself in the presence of what he said was the most impressive mountain mass that the globe can show, the Jungfrau. He wrote that the stranger's first feeling when suddenly confronted by that towering and awful apparition wrapped in its shroud of snow is breathtaking astonishment. It is as if heaven's gates had swung open and exposed the throne. Well, here again we've got that sense of mountains reflecting something of a glimpse of the eternal. And yet mountains also may instill a sense of raw power and fear. They are not just heavenly. After all, they are wild places. Still, in that sense of wildness and otherness, as well as the beauty, they do reflect something of God.